Welcome back to the Montreal Comedy Festival. It's Alex talking to the big stars, and trust me, in comedy they don't come any bigger than Tommy Tiernan. How are you?
Well, I hope I can live up to that introduction.
I mean, you've got a great name to start with. I mean, it helps if you've got a name that people can remember. Alex Belfield's far harder to remember than Tommy Tiernan for some reason, isn't it?
When I started off doing comedy in England in the late 1990s, people thought it was a made-up name. And I remember once, and then people found it hard to get right. I was introduced on stage one night in Brixton as Tommy Turnip. So it sounds like one of those old musical Max Miller type names, but no, it's the real deal.
And of course you've been invited over here, which must be some kind of endorsement to your talent, because they're not just flying anybody in, are they?
Oh, they are. I think if you look I think if you look through the bill, I think there's a few anybodies, and I'm king of the anybodies. You know, we're fillers. No, it's great. I mean, I've worked so much in Ireland over the past, say, 5 or 6 years that you I guess you start to, and I've had such success there that you worry that, and we've all seen this, I think, with acts, that the more successful they become, in a way, the lazier they become as comics, because they no longer have to try. Somebody walks out, the crowd are there to see the name, and they just walk out and he says hello, and 15,000 people in, you know, Manchester arenas go, ha ha ha, he's so funny. All he said was hello. I don't know, it's just the way he says it. So I think the thing is always to be putting yourself in places where you're not that well known, so you can't rely on that factor where you have to keep reproducing the goods all the time. So even though it can be it's a challenge to your sense of self-worth in terms of whatever you've invested in yourself as a star and where you're from, it's always the best thing to do is to go where people don't know you. So with that, I am announcing the tour of the Ganges, playing to holy men and washerwomen.
It's fascinating how there's a big leap now, isn't there, between appearing once on BBC Two and suddenly filling the Nottingham Arena or Birmingham and filling these 13,000 seaters. And I just don't know how comedy works in those venues.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's that where people hear the material is hugely important. If you went to see a show in a church, it would be different from hearing it in, you know, the same if you heard a show in a container on a lorry that was bringing refugees from Eastern Europe to Southampton. I think environment is everything, you know, and in those big venues, absolutely, it's you know, I wonder, the best comedy albums are often ones that are recorded in small clubs in America. You say Bill Hicks stuff or old Lenny Bruce stuff, or you get things then like the big huge shows where they're more of a spectacle and event. But say with jazz albums, I've often listened to a fantastic Miles Davis thing, and unbelievable musicianship and just fantastic improvisation and just gorgeous work with melody and structure and genius, and he finishes the song and you hear about 3 people clapping. But I'm same with the comedy stuff, and I do wonder how that, you know, I've done I think the biggest show I ever did was in the Liverpool, the Echo Arena, was to about 6,000 people, and it does change the nature of the event, you know. But that's, I mean, preferably I think you'd always want to be playing smaller rooms, smaller packed rooms. I think it suits the spoken word, but you have to embrace it as well. And I remember once having a conversation with a comedian who plays, you know, airport hangars basically, and he says you just have to go for it. He said there's no difference between 1,000 and 15,000, so you just gotta. So I guess it's whatever's fun to the performer, I think, and to the audience. And but you're right, sometimes these things can be odd. Like there's an American comic, Dane Cook. He plays to huge. I remember Steve Martin in his biography Born Standing Up, he talks about playing football stadiums. You know, where you've 35,000 people.
It's also odd that you would pay $50 to see that, because I think, well, I might as well buy the DVD for $15 and sit on my couch and have a nice drink and nice warm central heating and things like that.
Yeah, I know. It's you know, you wouldn't want to see Led Zeppelin in your sitting room live right? But you would go to see them in the O2 Arena or whatever. But it's amazing. I don't. There's no. I wouldn't have an answer for the glib kind of. Well, I can define it, and this is what it is. But it's smaller rooms are not necessarily less successful, you know. And I think I went to see a show the other night here, Mark Maron, in a small tiny room. Maybe there was 100 people there, and it was fantastic. And it suited the size of the room. It was perfect, you know. And I've gone to see big, huge, you know, 8,000 seater things, and you know, what's interesting is the bigger the room, if an individual laughs in a small room, the comic can hear it. You could be playing a 15,000 seater, 6,000 people could be laughing, and you wouldn't hear it. So that's you know, you only hear it when all of them cheer. But it's amazing that 6,000 people going ha 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 ha, and you might as well be in another town because you can't, and you get no energy from that then, you know. So it's just the nature of it. So
presumably you can't hear the heckles either, so it's a double-edged sword.
Well, no, you can't hear. All you hear is kind of which is fine, you know.
It's interesting looking at you and your career, because you've kind of been defined as someone original and a new style of comic, and you're taken seriously. I notice there's a lot of people at this festival who seem to do a lot of the same material and appear to be the same, especially the American comics are so polished and brilliant, but they're all in the same way. Did you set out to be different, or is this just you and it just happened to be something new for comedy?
I don't think it's something new for comedy. I think in anything, my style of stuff is very old-fashioned in a way, and I think you could, from my perspective on it, you could say, oh well, it's quite like Billy Connolly. I think it's in the same type of arena as people like Peter Kay, or it's just storytelling. There's no, I wouldn't see it as anything kind of original. I absolutely don't think that it's if you set out trying to be different, it's like people who try to be successful. You know, you can just sense it in them, and it's unpleasant to be around. You know, I think you have to, you know, whatever, it has to flow naturally from you. And when the style of what I do, it just fits me, and I don't think I don't try and make it original. In fact, sometimes I was talking to a friend of mine about this recently, and I had this piece of material. And I said to him, I'm really excited about doing this piece of material, because I was performing at the Cat Laughs Festival in Kilkenny. I said, I'm really excited about performing this bit of material because it was a bit of material about, I got so lonely once in a hotel room in Canada that I asked Jesus to come into my life as my personal saviour. That's how bored I was. And it was a story about that, you know. And I said, I'm really excited about telling that story because I don't think anybody else is telling that type of thing. And he said, well, you know, I think people just want to hear you talk about ordinary stuff. I think people want to hear you talking about getting up in the morning, and I don't think people want, the more you try to be clever, the less interesting you are. So I think that you kind of have to monitor that all the time, and not try to be original, just do whatever flows out of you. And I think with the American comics, I think there is just not with all of them, and I think the more American comedy you see, you can say, okay, there's a large percentage of acts which are similar in tone, but I don't know, it's almost like they're trying to be something that they've seen, whereas the original acts are just people who are saying, I'm not trying to be original, I'm just trying to cope, I'm trying to do what I do in a way that allows me to do it. You know, I'm not trying to be original. But I mean, if you think about it, like there's American acts who they have, you might get a guy who's working for 15 years in the circuit in America, and he gets a gala at Montreal, and for him that's his big break. He is able to boil his 15 years of work down to 7.5 minutes, and he can, it's a perfect little kind of What's the small trees? The
Bonsai.
Bonsai. It's a little bonsai version of his life. You know, and I think I'm not sure if I imagined this or if it actually happened, but I think I heard somebody say, you know, that they were talking in conversation with an American actor was talking to somebody, and he said, you know, I could do, you know, I've it all boiled down. I can do it in 7.5 minutes. And the guy goes, well, that's too long. He says, you know, I have a 2-minute version. And if you follow that through, he probably has a 10-second. It's probably like a. So it is. But that's just it. Their style of comedy is, and you know, as a European, that can be very refreshing. You know, when you're in a comedy club, and Irish acts especially are quite long-winded. And that's just the nature of it. It's like, you know, I think, like, I don't know how long this interview has been going, but you probably asked about 2 questions. I've been talking for 12 minutes. So you know, it's through talking that you discover, you know, and the American acts come in, and it can be refreshing sometimes just to have stuff that's so polished and bang, and in, you know, sometimes you can feel inadequate as a kind of a long-form, long-winded person when these guys are able just to. I was doing my show last night, and I'm performing in a cinema, more or less, and the problem with that is the seats are so comfortable that
you weren't falling asleep, were they?
They're not falling asleep, but they come in. Usually, when you come into a show, you kind of sit down in your chair, and the chair is irrelevant. You're here to see the show. But in the cinema, the people come in, they sit down and go, wow, these chairs are fantastic. And they sit back and they relax. So you're competing against the upholstery, you know. And I was doing my stuff, and I'd just been to see Mark, and I started to think, I sensed that people were listening, but they were also stroking the armrests, moving back and forth like that, and I started to think, oh my god, I have no jokes. I wish I had jokes. I wish I had well thought out comic ideas instead of just going for an hour and a half. But anyway, that was the style of it.
It's a bit like the working men's club, isn't it? Never compete with the buffet because you won't win.
Well, yeah, there's wisdom in that, you know. The more I'm doing comedy, the more respect I have for those comics too. There was such an arrogance with with alternative comedy when it started, and maybe, you know, arrogance needed to be arrogant initially in order for the birth to be completed. The kind of arrogance was the pain, you know, the labour pains, but there was such a kind of a dismissal of the working class comics and all they've been through and all that they had learned after years of playing clubs that are bad rooms, people not paying attention. That great Ken Dodd line about, you know, well, Freud was okay, but he never played the Glasgow Empire on a Saturday night. You know? So I think the more I'm doing this, the more I've come to respect those guys. And even though our styles might be different, inherently it's the same thing. It's guys getting up with funny ideas, trying to convince the room to laugh, you know. And
you all just want to be loved at the end of the day, don't you?
Loved and then immediately left alone.
How is it being at a festival like this with all other comedians who are staying in the hotel? Does it get on your nerves, or are you happy bumping into people and having to talk to them and talk comedy for hours on end?
I think it's great. I think stand-ups we're like assassins, you know. We travel the world on our own, doing our own thing, sneaking out of hotels very early in the morning, living on window ledges. No, it's great. It's we're natural loners, I think, and we're natural control freaks, and but something like this, you can only be grateful for it. There are a few festivals in the world where you get to meet people. There's I haven't done Edinburgh in a long time now, but you know, I remember that, and Kilkenny and here is where it's genuinely social, and we don't need each other, you know. You meet people and you have a cup of coffee. I must stay in contact with him because that was such fun. And then you kind of, well, actually, no. I'll see him next year. I've had enough human interaction.
It's a bit like the guy from IBM sat next to the guy from Apple with this new invention, and he's seeing what you're doing and you're seeing what he's doing. Is there ever that moment where you think, I hope he's not going to nick my act? Because it's easy to do, isn't it?
Yeah, but I remember thinking about this the other night. Once that, if you're overburdened with the idea of being original, if you're trying to be original, and if you're trying very hard to be successful, that's when you become very territorial about what you have. And that's what when you see guys who are like, that's my bit, he stole my bit. Now I've had that happen to me, and that was my reaction. But I think that in a way, the more you just, like we were saying, just do whatever flows naturally out of you, the less, not concerned, but theoretically the less bothered you are by that. And really, I mean, we're all kind of doing, people are phrasing things differently. People are, but we're all more or less kind of talking about the same stuff. I think if you analysed the kind of the thinking breakdown of how a joke works, you set something up, then you undercut it or you reverse it or whatever. There's a lot of kind of similar, a lot of. I went to see Ross Noble the other night, and it was amazing that a lot of what's funny is it's not only the idea, but it's the phrasing of it. So there's a lot of kind of poetry involved. It's how you say it. It's how the words that you use for your comedy poem. So there's nothing really phenomenally original, I mean, there are pickpockets, and that's going to happen. But if it's I can't even remember the question, but I'll keep talking.
It's interesting what you say about Ross, though, because I mean, having seen him again last night, I've seen him 3 times since I've been here. He can just make funny, and he has the supreme confidence where if you don't get a laugh, he'll get a laugh out of it not getting a laugh, and then move it to another place, and just that incredible confidence to keep talking. But that's more about him and his personality, isn't it, than what he's saying? Because if I said it, it probably wouldn't get a laugh at all.
No, it is absolutely a confidence thing. We're like guys at the, like Del Boy at the market, selling robot clocks or
effectively a load of rubbish.
There you go, which is what it is, isn't it? It's a load of rubbish, like. But if you have that kind of put on your huckster face and
and setting it up as genius.
Hey, so come on, Donny, it's a clock. Look, it's a clock. It's a robot. It's a clock. And they go, wow, it's a robot and a clock. How can I not have that? But yeah, it is absolutely a confidence trick, and it's also as well. I think what it is that in neuro-linguistics they say that whatever the patterns of thinking are habitual, that neurons get formed between different cells in your brain, and once you think a particular way a lot, that's the way you naturally think. So someone like Ross, Ross's job is almost taking nothing and having the confidence. It's a bit like, remember Indiana Jones when he's just before he goes over to the guy with the Holy Grail, he's at this ravine and he can't see the path, and then he says, oh, you must, I think he's remembering what this guy said to him. He says, oh, you must walk on air or something. He takes a step, and remember the scene, and it's stone, but he can't, the way that stone is the same as and he walks across it. I think Ross is like that as well, that once you just have the confidence just to go for it, and it then, and we're all going, oh my God, how does he do that?
And that's his thing as well. He makes it look so easy, and that's what a great comic does. Like you, it doesn't ever feel like you're trying at it, because when it does, then it's suddenly not funny. You can't have any tension, can you?
Well, now, I have this argument with myself all the time. Charles Bukowski, the famous American poet, on his epitaph was "Don't try," and there's great wisdom in that. And it is that thing of effortlessness gets the most stuff done, But for me, it's a constant thing of oddly trying not to try. And like last night, I was saying in the venue, because of the way the competing against the chairs, I found myself trying. I felt, where are these people? I was gonna, you know, and every time that happens, you just gotta stop and you gotta. It's like freewheeling in a car. You know, when you're going downhill, you just turn off the engine and let the. Now you have to be careful as well. A friend of mine told a very funny story, a true story that happened to him. He was, their house was 4 miles away from the pub, and 2 miles were uphill, right, and 2 miles were downhill, and they were driving the car, and after a mile and a half, the car ran out of petrol. So this is what we do. They said, okay, why don't we push the car to the top of the hill, and then we'll all get into it, and we'll just, once we're done, we'll just take off the handbrake, and we should be able to roll all the way down to the pub with no petrol. It's a bit of a windy road, but I think we'll manage it. And everybody goes, okay, let's do that. So they pushed the car up at the top, they got in, engine off, handbrake off, and they were rolling down the hill. Said they went around the first corner, they were fine. They went around the second corner, but what happened was they turned the steering wheel, and the automatic lock of the steering wheel came on, and they lost control, and they went flying into the ditch. So
there's a moral there somewhere, isn't there?
I have no idea what the moral is, but it's buried somewhere in that anecdote.
Tommy Tiernan, thank you very much for talking to me. You are a true legend of comedy, and there aren't really many of those. You're taken seriously. You've never been a laughing stock. And I know that sounds as if I'm being sycophantic, but it's so nice. It means you're credible, and I don't know whether you take that as a compliment or an insult.
It's probably something that I wouldn't trust.
That's the world of comedy.
I know you can't. I mean, God Almighty. God forbid you should ever wake up in the morning and go, I'm a legend.
Tommy Tiernan, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you.